CBS and the New York Times ran a poll with a sample size of only 23% Republicans and 39% Democrats. Magically, Barack Obama had an all-time high approval rating, and Republicans were at an all-time low.
Actually, this poll was done in a blue state, where the average amount of Republicans is only 21%. By using 23% Republicans, they actually gave you a more favorable result than you would otherwise have gotten in a blue state.
Who's got the balls? I've got the balls. Big balls. Today is April 8, 2009. Here's what's in the news today. Wisconsin has asked people to refrain from feeding the squirrels at the state capitol. Their concern is that some child may have a peanut allergy. Follow this logic. Their argument is that if you give a peanut to a squirrel, that squirrel may take that peanut and travel in close proximity to somebody who has a peanut allergy, and then that person is going to get sick.
Actually, the problem isn't with feeding the squirrels. The problem is that someone is layering the entire ground with peanuts every day, which is a serious health hazard for people allergic to peanuts.
In fact, the reason why we never heard about peanut allergies 20 years ago is because people who had peanut allergies were simply exposed to peanuts over time, and they developed a partial immunity.
Or they died.
But now some children in schools aren't even allowed to eat peanut butter sandwiches.
And what if your child's born with a peanut allergy? What will you think then? Would you be willing to take the risk? I don't think so.
Control. In international news, after Barack Obama went on his apology tour, Hugo Chavez says that Barack Obama should apologize to Japan for dropping the atom bomb on it.
Obama's campaigning for a nuclear-free world, and America are the only people who have ever actually used them on other people. It is appropriate for him to apologize.
In other news, the Congressional Black Caucus went to see Fidel Castro and praised him as such a wonderful man. Yeah, a wonderful man that throws people in prisons for dissent, controls all the media, and creates a prison where people would rather be eaten by sharks alive than live there one more day.
Well, we're talking about throwing people in prison for no reason. Let's talk about Guantanamo Bay for a moment, shall we? That's long enough. I think everyone out there knows about that evil atrocity of war your people have created. And while we're talking about controlling the media, how about the Patriot Act and several other things that your government's been using to censor your news networks for decades? Why do you think it was never very well reported that there were no WMDs ever? And the reason that people in Cuba have to risk being eaten by a shark to get to America is not because of anything Cuba or any of the Castro brothers have done. It's because of the American sanctions, which are illegal and immoral, and are only imposed because Cuba is a communist nation.
In other news, Barack Obama's new plan to stop global warming is to cool the air. They're considering right now shooting pollution particles into the air to block out the sun. Hey, what could go wrong with that idea?
It's appropriate that the state of Florida looks like a penis, because most of the people who live there are big, old, opinionated dicks. And Dexter, of course.
In other news, Barack Obama's new plan to stop global warming is to cool the air. They're considering right now shooting pollution particles into the air to block out the sun. Hey, what could go wrong with that idea?
A lot could go wrong with that. That's why they're not doing it. And they're not going to put pollution particles in the air. They're going to put sulfur particles. What they're going to do is artificially do what volcanoes already do naturally now. They also have other ideas, such as structures which absorb carbon mechanically, which has already been started in Australia, in fact.
In entertainment news, Sony and HBO are going to develop a Barack Obama documentary. Now that Barack Obama's finally in the White House, I guess it's okay to finally look into his past.
Yes, that's exactly right. It would have been very, very, very unprofessional to do a documentary on someone during their election campaign.
Other hilarious examples of media bias, the Associated Press took an article from the Chicago Sun-Times that talked about Jesse Jackson Jr. and Blagojevich. The Chicago Sun-Times article mentioned several times that Blagojevich was a Democrat and Jesse Jackson Jr. was a Democrat. The Associated Press, however, just wiped out the fact that they were Democrats and rewrote the article. So we're back to the exciting game of name that party. The Republicans.
Actually, the phrase you're trying to copy is unname that party. And they did this so that they would not be biased. If they printed this and clearly said, oh, these Democrats are so corrupt, then people would have accused them of being biased. What they said was these politicians from one of the major parties are corrupt, which is a much more unbiased way of putting it. Although in truth it was most likely to avoid people from putting Democrat and corruption in the same sentence. But Republicans already know everything about corruption. After all, what happened to George Bush's criminal record? Oh yeah, it magically disappeared. Kind of like all those WMDs, hey!
And lastly, in the month of March, the number of people who identified as Republicans was 33%. Over the past year, the lowest it's ever gotten was 31%. In terms of Democrats, 39% of Americans identified as Democrats. So if you wanted to figure out the approval rating of Barack Obama, wouldn't it make sense to have a 39% Democrat and 33% Republican of the sample size? Yeah, that would make sense if you wanted to have an accurate poll. But that's not what CBS and the New York Times did. CBS and the New York Times took a sample size of only 23% Republicans. It's never been that low.
The statistics you were stating, I'd like to know where they came from because they're wrong. You said that 39% of all Americans are Democrats. Well, actually, that number's only true in blue states. You also said that 33% of Americans are Republicans, which is only true in red states. You've taken statistics from two completely different areas and used them as one. Your results are wrong, and fictitious, in fact. In the state that this took place in, the statistics were accurate. It wasn't representative of the whole of America, but of one blue-biased state.
So you'd think with a sample size that low of Republicans, there's no way in the world that anybody would report the results from that poll. But not CBS and the New York Times, oh no. The results that they got from a poll with that sample size demonstrated that Barack Obama had a high approval rate of 66%. Record high levels. Maybe because the sample size should have had 10% more.
Should have had 2% less, actually.
Polls like this serve no other purpose than to allow the media to put their editorial page into their news pages. And then they can editorialize what these meaningless polls actually mean to the country. And they can say it means that everybody loves Barack Obama now. What garbage.
These statistics show the percentage of Democrat and Republicans in various states. As you can see, Democrats outweigh Republicans significantly, except in red states, where they're only equal. This is actually his old music. It's much better though, isn't it? I think he might have been listening to me. Scary. So please leave any comments on how I can improve these videos underneath. Thank you.
Who's got the balls? I got the balls. Big balls.
Sorry this video is up late, but I had the Cornficker virus on my computer. I have managed to defeat it, and I can say that there is only one way to get it off your system once you have it. You save whatever you can, back everything up on another hard drive, then you have to completely hard reformat your entire system hard drive. Not even a quick format, the whole thing that takes like an hour. And then reinstall Windows from that. There's no way around it that I can find. And if you made the Cornficker virus, then fuck you to hell.